Charles Goldfarb, and I'm joined by my co-host Alexander Aleem for the AOA podcast, Lessons in Orthopedic Leadership. Today, we will discuss away rotations or externships for orthopedic residency. We are joined by Brandi Hartley, who is a physician from Wright State University School of Medicine, who performed her residency at the University of Louisville, a trauma fellowship from Grant Medical Center, and is now assistant professor at the University of Louisville and the program director for their residency. In addition, she is a cord member for the academic committee. And I'd also like to point out that Alexander Aleem, my co-host, is the program director for our residency at Washington University. So Brandi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
All right, I'll get started with the first question. So today we're going to discuss away rotations, and they're certainly a hot topic given our post-pandemic current status, what happened last year and what the future looks like. But let's just start with the basics. So why do you feel that away rotations are an important tool for both the applicant and the program as medical students apply to residency?
I think the first and foremost is you get to know the heartbeat of the program and vice versa. I think the simple and easy answer is exactly that we get to know each other on a collegial level. How do we work together? Is your personality going to fit with ours? We have 25 residents right now. Are you going to mesh with them? It's 5 years. Is your spouse going to mesh with us? Is the city right for you? Is it wrong for you? And it's just kind of the basic concept of like, it's kind of a try it on before you buy it kind of thing.
I would echo that completely. And I think it's, in orthopedics, it's something that's kind of a known part of the application process. You have to go on some prescribed number of away rotations. Last year, we all had to pivot very quickly, kind of in the spring of 2020 as away rotations are being canceled. And I think every institution had some type of virtual rotation, recruitment session. What was your experience with that? And do you think you were able to get the same sort of information about applicants and applicants get the same information about your program in these virtual sort of experiences?
I think we were really lucky with the group that I currently have, that they were very, very lenient with their time and were able to participate on multiple different levels. My residents and I did, I think, 4 or 5 virtual meet and greets. And do I think that those were as sufficient as a month-long away? Absolutely not. Do I feel that they got a better idea than just, a piece of paper? Yes. Do I feel that that did a disservice for their spouses? Yes. Did they get a feel for Louisville? No. So I think that there's a lot of challenges to the whole process. Do I think that it was better than nothing? Yeah. But I also felt like I had a little bit of an insight last year because I had all of the names of everybody that was already applied or interested or had a way already scheduled. So I had that forethought and I had that information that I could disperse to those interested students that kind of gave me an upper edge than this year. This year is a little more challenging because we only get one. And so did they apply less? Yeah, I'm sure that they did. And then they took the first they got. And so I don't think I'm going to have as great of a response this year as I did last year.
Alexander, what's your take on the same question? How do you think Washington University handled the virtual experience? And again, I'm sure you would echo Brandi's comments. It was useful, but kind of any additional thoughts?
No, I agree with Brandi. I think it was, obviously it was better than nothing. And we had the same information because we already had kind of our away rotation kind of planned out. We had the students that were coming in. So we had a sense about the students that were interested in the program. And the same thing, our residents really made themselves more than available for these experiences. We did a lot. We had kind of students sign on weekly to conferences. Our residents ran their own kind of weekly, they call them just sort of informational sessions or kind of orthopedic knowledge sessions where they would get a group of applicants together and talk about basic things that you need to know as a sub-intern, hip fractures, pediatric elbow fractures. It was a lot of effort from our residents, and you could definitely tell by the end of it, we were all tired. I mean, I had a lot of Zoom fatigue before the interviews even started because we're meeting weekly with students. We're kind of engaging on this. It was just a lot of, nights on my computer talking to people, and then you had to go to the interview season, and it was a lot. So I think it was better than nothing. I think the other interesting thing is this year now, Brandi said you had one. How do we deal with that? Because the students are limited, schools are limiting students. What do you do with that? And have you noticed maybe a decrease in the applications for away rotations to your institution?
May I interrupt and just ask for
Yeah.
clarification? So you guys are the experts and I am not, and I'm sure many of the listeners will already know the answer to this, but just be very clear. So each applicant is allowed one away rotation. Is that what you guys are saying?
Yeah, that is the recommendation right now.
Okay, perfect. Sorry to interrupt, Brandi, if you want to comment on Alexander's point.
I think that, yes, it does appear that mathematically we have less applicants than we normally do for aways this year. And that was only a mild number. However, we have had a substantial amount of people back out of aways than we never had before. So that's also a new issue for our program coordinator and the trauma teams. And it's kind of disappointing because one of the aspects of summer trauma, right? I'm a traumatologist, by the way, but one of the aspects of so much fun of summer trauma is having these green like students, and they're so excited, and every fingernail becomes like a new experience, and it's invigorating for our residents too, who are starting summer trauma, and they probably didn't vote for that one, and they kind of got scheduled that way, and so then it's like it helps kind of the momentum having students around in the summer. It also offloads the heavy volume. So it's kind of super disappointing for us a little bit this year. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but we had a great match last year. So I'm hopeful that it'll be as similar. But I think that the one away is really challenging for students. And I think it's going to be kind of sad for us this summer.
So I guess maybe I'll ask both of you to understand how you're planning to address the year. So obviously, many students who would like to have an experience in Louisville and in St. Louis are not going to get that opportunity, which may be the worst of both worlds. And so are you both planning to have a, I guess, hybrid externship opportunity? And if you can, maybe Alexander, you go first. Can you share a little bit about what your plans are?
Yeah, I think we had a similar experience to what Brandi said. We had probably a decreased number of applicants than we typically see. And then I think the more disappointing thing is we had a significant number of applicants back out. One of the things, and I think, Josh Pat had sort of talked about this at a CORD meeting, was do we have a universal offer day for away rotation, similar to what we did last year for interviews? And institutions didn't really seem to line up with that. And I think we're seeing the consequence of it is away rotations. Every institution has different rules. Everyone has this kind of rolling admissions process. And so people were clamoring to get one, and then they get accepted to three. They say yes to one, they back out of another. And it's hard to really know what to do with that. In terms of the virtual rotations, we are going to have some of the virtual experiences, but definitely not to the same extent. I think it's asking our residents to do a lot, because last year they didn't have any away students that they had to sort of manage. This year we do, and we have at our institution, we have 10 home students that are applying to orthopedics this year. So we're going to have, our residents have a lot of students, and our faculty have a lot of students to have to manage. And so we'll have a limited hybrid experience, but it definitely won't be nearly the same volume or cadence that we had last year.
And Brandi, what are your plans for, I guess, again, a hybrid externship experience?
Yeah, I think we'll always extend the invites for grand rounds and block conferences and our fracture conferences and such. I do think that that's an easy thing for all of us to do. It's not complicated. The amount of time that we did planning and coordinating all of those meet and greets, I just don't know if we'll do as many or as much. We also pre-planned a lot and did a lot of questions, and it was just a lot. And I don't think that I'm going to ask the same. And like Dr. Aleem said, I have 14 this year, which is the most I've ever had in my life at U of L going into orthopedics. So I guess it's a good thing that we're having this invigorated, excitement about orthopedics. However, it is also quite onerous on a PD to make sure that they all match, and that's a little challenging. So I think that my focus is going to make sure that their aways go well, and how to get them matched in a place that's going to be right for them. So I think I'm going to put my eggs in a different basket a little bit this year than I did last year.
Great. I was wondering, kind of, how are you dealing with the students that back out? of an externship? Because it's a really challenging question. Because when this happens to us, when we get interviews, well, then that's easy because they're not going to interview with us. So they're not on our list, but they
Right.
still may apply and they still may want to come here. I have one student that dug themselves in the deepest hole trying to explain why they backed out. And I just wanted to say, it's okay. Just tell me you're leaving and don't try to rationalize this because you're making this look worse. But how do we deal with that? I mean, do we penalize students because this is what the circumstance they're put in? They have no
Right. It's
choice.
not their fault. Yeah, this is
Right.
totally not their fault. I think that this was a decision made for them unfairly. Obviously, I can't, I historically am the same way. I would have just been like, well, you didn't choose us, so we're not
Right.
choosing you, right? Same concept, right? However, I think in this situation, I've also had this new experience where we're having a lot of students come visit unofficially. I don't know if you're getting this invite, and I'm not really sure how to manage this. And they're going to my residence saying, hey, I'm going to come stay this weekend. Is it okay if I come? And I'm like, I don't know how to manage this. I don't know if that's happening at WashU. We're also a little smaller in like this magnitude of schools and cities, and so I think a lot of people are a little more lackadaisical about the rules. So I'm not really sure how I'm handling that either. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this situation. So if anybody has the guidance on that, that would be awesome too. I think we're just in a real challenging position that it's not really fair, and I don't think that we can penalize them in any fashion. It's just not fair. So the interest was there. We have to just kind of ride on the interest initially.
Yeah, it puts applicants in an incredibly hard position. I guess we naturally might feel spurned, but there's a lot of reasons why a student will pick rotation A over rotation B, and not all of those are relevant ultimately to the match. So that is a tough one. Alexander, do you know if we are experiencing St. Louis the same trend of kind of unofficial visits?
If we are, the residents have done a really good job hiding it from me. So, I will say, our institution is probably they've been very by the letter when it comes to recommendations from CDC, AAMC, very much in terms of those things. And so I think I don't know of anything, but definitely I think you see that. I think, Chuck, you kind of mentioned the application process for students applying into orthopedics is harder and harder every year. We keep on hearing these daunting numbers. The average orthopedic applicant applies to almost 80 programs. Programs are having to review almost 600 to 700 applications. For you, Brandi, where does that away rotation evaluation kind of fit into your hierarchy of how you evaluate a student? Is it something that's really important? Is it something that's kind of middle? For us, it's really important. Students come in, that's almost like if they do great, they're going to get really highly put on our match list, kind of regardless of some of the other metrics. And if they do poorly and they have really good other metrics, they're still going to kind of be on the bottom part of the list. How does it for y'all?
Oh, exactly the same. I think that if you have an invested interest in our program, we have an invested interest in you, as long as you check the boxes of the right, like you're not, crazy weird, or you don't fit in at all, or you kind of tell me how to do my surgeries, that sort of stuff. But other than that, if you're a kosher human being, which most of these applicants are just so incredible. I swear I would never match into orthopedics if I were applying right now. I mean, they're hands down incredible people. So it's just impossible to narrow them down. And I mean, I look at every application and I'm just like, I don't even know how to compare and contrast. They're all incredible. So aways are paramount. I mean, by far, that's the definition of, I know you're interested in me, I'm interested in you.
Yeah, and that's the challenge here, right? It truly is a match. We're looking for the right interchange and the right applicant for the program and the right program for the applicant, and that is so critical when we consider away rotation. So, what's the buzz on the future of the away rotations? We know this year each applicant is allowed one away rotation. Alexander, maybe you can start. So, what are you hearing about the future? Will we get back to unlimited aways, or is the future potentially look different?
Yeah, I think it's looking different, and it's interesting. Brandi, you know a lot about this with your involvement with CORD, with the AOA, but COPA, which is sort of this physician group that comes out with recommendations and has been the main sort of committee that's come out with recommendations regarding away rotations last year, has and with the guidance this year has sort of implicated that they're considering completely recommending against away rotations across the board, regardless of specialty. And the concerns they're bringing up is interesting. It's not related to COVID, which is what this has all been in the framework of the last 2 years, has in terms of safety of medical students. It's now kind of pivoted to a discussion of equity and the cost associated with away rotations, cost of travel, cost of having to rent a place while you're potentially paying for rent. And, I think, as Brandi mentioned, for us in orthopedics, that touch point in the away rotation is so important for these applicants to distinguish themselves. It's going to make evaluation of students that much harder. And I'd be interested to hear kind of, Brandi, what your thoughts are on this potential discussion of the elimination of away rotations.
I wish that I wasn't angry about it, but I am. I think I'm just overall angry. I think that it's just challenging to recognize. I feel like being a part of I'm the COPA liaison for AOA, and being a part of that, I feel like the OPDA and that sort of stuff have kind of given me a real insight on how every subspecialty is just so different, and how we function and how we conduct interviews, how we conduct ROAs, how we evaluate all kinds of different aspects of an applicant, the steps, the AOA, the what's important, letters of recommendation, not the deans, the MSPE, like all these things, all those aspects of the application process are very, very much so weighted differently based on subspecialty. How we look at things, how we assess things it's completely different. And so having blanket statements are so incredibly powerful, like COPA's, I think is really challenging for me to wrap my head around right now. I'm not saying I'm opposed to change, though. So it's not that I'm opposed to change. I'm not opposed to trying something new and different, but I think that it's doing a disservice to those of us that don't look absolutely beautiful on paper, right? So I'm from Appalachia. I'm a young, white girl who knows nothing about anything. My mother was 17 when she had me. I didn't know what I was doing. And the fact that I did aways helped them identify me as who I was, and not this piece of paper that didn't look so pristine and perfect and awesome like the rest of our applicants currently do today. And so I think that it gave me a fighting chance. Had I not rotated at Louisville and fell in love with this program, and luckily they found love with me, I may not be an orthopedic surgeon today. And so I think that there's so much power in that. And I feel like I think it's doing a disservice to our future students. And like you would even say, even the diversity of what we have come. I mean, we're coming so far. Such a slow process in orthopedics, but I think we've really come far in a lot of ways with our openness and our exploration within diversity, and how we're really trying to kind of look at how we're doing it wrong and how to make it better. And I feel like this is a step backwards. It's not a step forward, at least in my eyes. I'm trying to look differently at it, but I just can't figure it out right now.
Wow, that's really well said. Thank you for sharing that. It resonates, what you said resonates with me. I think on a very superficial level, one can say, oh, not everyone can afford an away rotation, so therefore we should do away with them. And it feels like a very, like I said, superficial reaction to a much more complex challenge. Alexander, what's your take?
I echo a lot of what Brandi said, and I think especially for students that may not come from what we have in the past considered traditional backgrounds in orthopedics, and it's such an important mission of what we're doing, I think, in residency recruitment, is trying to improve the diversity, trying to really represent our patients better by training surgeons that are like our patients. And to those touch points that you have with the students can really break down a lot of the misconceptions that maybe people have about different backgrounds, different races, different ethnicities, different genders when it comes to what an orthopedic surgeon is supposed to be. And so it takes that interaction with a student to realize that, wow, maybe, yeah, no, that you don't have to have this certain look about you or this certain pedigree in order to be a successful orthopedic surgeon. And I have the same fear that we're just going to revert back to what we know, because it's going to be the argument of, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's going to get popped up more and more again. It's going to be, why are we taking a chance on this applicant who comes from this school that may have and we're not even have step one scores in next year, but is from this school, doesn't really have a lot of research, doesn't really have a lot of orthopedic experience, didn't really, whatever. And because we're basing it off of a piece of paper in a 10-minute Zoom interview, that's what we're going to have. So I agree. I want to be open to the argument, because I do think there is some questions about, the cost of it and talking to students. I mean, there is a huge financial burden, but it's not just the away rotations. It's the application, it's the licensing exams, it's the flights for interviews. I mean, there's a lot of cost that's being thrown into that. But I have the exact same kind of fears that Brandi does, as I worry about how this is going to affect people that we're really trying to bring into this specialty that may have a harder time cracking their way in.
I think that also touches on a point where, so I had to take out an extra loan, right, to do aways and interviews and all that stuff, as most of us, if not all of us, have. And I think back about that and I'm like, would I do that again? Absolutely. This was my passion. This was my dream. This was everything I was dreaming for. I was fighting for this. And if it cost me $30,000, I was going to do it, And is that too much to ask of students? I don't know if it is or isn't. I don't know the answer to that. But I also know that now that I'm almost 7 years out, I think, of fellowship, I've already paid it all back and didn't even flinch on that. And I don't know if that's the right argument or if the wrong argument, or if I should even think about it that way. But that's how I feel that's how I think about it. I was like, would I do it all over again? Absolutely. In a heartbeat. Would I travel all the time? Do I think that we could probably modify, so that if you had to choose, right, an interview or an away, I guarantee you these students would say, I'll go to an away. I will totally spend the money on the away because of the value to that versus an interview. And maybe we should do something where we hybrid our interview process, so where if they do an away, you don't have to go back. And, that's something that we're trying to do this year. And I think that's a good, kind of a compromise to the whole process. But it's not a solution. But I just think eliminating aways. And one of the other things that's so important about it aways is you develop networking skills and colleagues, and you meet other residents and that are in your field. So in the future, you'll meet other students that are rotating with you, and that networking is so paramount. As somebody who's applying for my advancement in academics, I had to get all these names and letters of reference that I didn't work with, and the only thing that I used was people that I did my trauma fellowship rotations with, and medical student stuff and residency. That's how I did it. So I don't know how these students are going to do it in the future if they don't ever meet anybody else.
Yeah, it's very fair. So just to be clear for the listeners, this is one body's recommendation for next year. And so certainly it seems to me, among the uninitiated as far as this process, but it seems to me that this is not a done deal as far as what we can expect. Is that true?
I believe so.
Yeah, as far as I know, it is. And Brandi, maybe you can speak to this. Obviously CORD kind of represents orthopedic program directors on a national level. What are the efforts that maybe are happening behind the scenes from CORD? Are we looking at, written statements coming out against this? How are we going to liaise with COPA and other specialties maybe to try to come up with a united front to try to advocate for away rotations?
Yeah, so as we are transitioning also leadership, but currently I literally got an email today with a statement for review regarding all of this exact stuff, not to mention even just interviews and virtual interviews, aways, and then many other aspects of 32 COPA recommendations of some nature. So just a statement regarding all of those. Yes, we are in process. We're also discussing the idea of connecting our views with other surgical subspecialties that are rather competitive, and maybe attempting to collaborate in a joint force to just express the importance and the differences of our subspecialties and how paramount these do assist our students getting matched properly.
Thank you. It's very reassuring for someone, again, like me, who is not in the know, to realize that we do have CORD representing all of us and our current and future residents. So it really is nice to hear, because it sure makes sense what we have discussed tonight. Alexander, any final questions or thoughts?
No, I think the one thing maybe we haven't touched on this, just your thoughts. USMLE step 1 is going to be pass fail next year for us. There's talks that step 2 CK will probably become pass fail in the next couple of years. Institutions are getting away with abandoning clinical grades, so everything is becoming pass fail. So Brandi, as a program director reviewing applications, what do you go to now? What's going to be your ability to be able to distinguish these 600 to 700 applications you're getting? Is it just throw them up on a wall and throw 100 darts at them and say you're in? Or
I think we might end up going to a numeric system, exactly like you just said. We might end up having to do something like that. What else are you going to do? Especially if you eliminate away. It's like, I truly don't know what I'm going to do in the future. It's already daunting enough as it is. I'm hoping that somebody else smarter than me is going to come up with a great idea and tell me what to do. I think right now it's just going to be it's so daunting. And, one of the saddest parts to this is also, those people that come from a different background, you can't shine now. Like, if you eliminate the shine, you can't work harder and look better and show everybody how dedicated you are and how important this goal is to you. You can't do that anymore. You're all just the same. We're all okay. And that's not fair. It's not fair. And it's going to be, I have students from a state university in the middle of Kentucky. And the chances of getting into, a Mass General or a Rush or, any of those number one, whatever you want to name them, programs is going to be dauntingly challenging. Unless you have some sort of network or a feeding system, it's going to be very challenging for my students. But if I told them work hard, you will be rewarded for it. You bust it, you get a 273, your door is open to anywhere you want to go. And now I don't have recommendations for them, which is not fair.
Well, I am an optimist. I think this is going to work out, although I hear both of you. The selection process has gotten quite muddy. Sounds like it'll get muddier, but I think we'll figure this out, and we will be able to identify those future stars and future residency mates. But it does seem daunting. I'm glad you two are on the job and representing all of us. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Happy to. And I would just say from my standpoint, I think all of those things are what makes the away rotation and what makes those orthopedic sub-Is even more important, because it's going to be all about how you performed and how you performed in front of people that know someone in another program. That's the way you're going to distinguish yourself. And so If we are going to have all these other things happening, it just means that the in-person interactions with orthopedic surgeons mean that much more.
Right. And then we're going into that whole concept of networking and networking bias.
Right.
And so we're doing the whole thing over again.
Well, Dr. Hartley, thank you for joining us on the AOA's Lessons in Orthopedic Leadership. And the University of Louisville is lucky to have you representing their orthopedic residency, and we were lucky to have you as a guest. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a good time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was awesome.